Let's take a look how insurance companies will pay for services rendered through the electronic claim process. The first step is to create a claim in Psykdesk, and through the integration, send that claim to the exchange. Now, the exchange can either accept that claim or reject it. If it accepts it, the exchange will then forward that claim on to the payer. If it rejects it, a notification will be sent back to Psykdesk letting you know that the claim was rejected and the reason why. Once the payer receives the claim, they will process the claim, potentially sending back messages back through the exchange to let everyone know how that processing is coming along. If the claim is valid, the payer will pay the claim, first by sending back an ERA back through the exchange, which will then be picked up inside of Psykdesk, and sending funds either electronically to your bank account or through the mail via check. The final step upon receiving an ERA that reflects payment is to post that ERA inside of Psykdesk, which will update the patient's accounting to reflect the payment. If the claim was not valid, the payer will send back a rejection message back through the exchange, which will be received inside of Psykdesk. The other option, if the payer decides not to pay the claim, is that they may send an ERA back to the exchange, which will go back into Psykdesk, indicating that they didn't pay anything, and the ERA will indicate the reasons why. Let's take a closer look at the matching and posting process which Psykdesk uses to automatically generate the payer accounting. In Psykdesk, we created a claim which had one or more claim charges associated with it and sent that claim through the exchange to get paid. The payer paid it and sent back an ERA. Now that ERA has one or more ERA payments associated with it as well. Psykdesk, upon receiving an ERA, will attempt to match each ERA payment to a claim charge. ERA payments that are matched can then be posted, which will create a payer payment and allocate it to the charge associated with the matched claim charge. So let's take a look at how to create claims inside of Psykdesk. The first thing you'll need to do is find the encounters that are going through the claims billing workflow that are ready to bill. So I'll navigate to the encounters console and I'll select ready to bill claims. So these encounters are now in a ready to bill status and they already have claims created. So let me go ahead and select that and select create claims. So that just created a claim. I can go take a look at it under the claims console and select new and then select the claim I want to look at. So let's take a look at the structure of the claim. I have the patient information, the exchange that the claim is going through. This is the claim ID inside of Psykdesk. We have the payer ID as well as the payer's name for the claim, the amount of the claim, the type, whether it's a primary or secondary type claim, the status of the claim based upon the claims workflow, which goes through new, acknowledged, and partially paid if it's not entirely paid to finally paid. The encounter associated with this claim, so I can click on this link to navigate to the encounter that created that claim. And then I see all the information that will be on the claim. So the patient information will be in this section, and I can expand each section to see the details that will actually go on the claim, as well as the individual fields and names of the fields that data will get populated to. So there's the patient, there's the insured information, diagnosis information, so forth and so on. This section is the claim charges. So these are the actual charges and the services that I'd like to be paid. And so you can see the additional information there. You can also add comments to a claim to keep track of any potentially issues you may be having. If you would like to leave a comment about it, you can do that here. You could also add issues in the context of a claim. So if comments aren't enough and you actually want to have an issue created, assigned to someone who will be responsible for managing that issue to completion, you can create an issue here as well. Now, if the claim is in a status of new, I have the option to edit some of the specific details of the claim by clicking Edit. And I can override any of this information on the claim if I want to. But this should only be used for exception processing in those cases where you don't have any other choice but to actually edit the claim. The preferred method, if you would like to change, for example, the CPT code or maybe the units or the rate amount on the claim, the preferred method is to go back to the source data, such as the encounter, change it there, and then hit the Recreate button. What that will do is recreate the claim, pulling in all the information that you've changed and updating the claim with the new information. Let's take a look at the action menu for the claim. Now, we already talked about the Recreate action, which will recreate all of the information on the claim. I can also cancel the claim. So, for example, if I don't want to send this particular claim out, or if it got paid some other way, I can move it into a status of cancel. I can also print a HCFA form for this particular claim. So if the payer does not go through the exchange and I need to send a HCFA form manually through the mail, I have the option to select that action and the system will create for me a pre-populated HCFA form. In the case where the payer requires the actual stock to be the red HCFA form, you can select the Print HCFA Pre-Printed option, and this will put all of the information in the appropriate spot so that when you print it out on your printer, it'll show up in that form. You can also create secondary claims from here. Secondary claims are created off of the primary claim. We'll see that in a little bit. I can also click the Override Status action. And this allows me to manually change the status of the claim. Again, and this would be an exception processing situation if I need to override the claim status manually. So if everything looks good, the next step is to send the claim to the exchange. Now I can either do this manually or the system will do it automatically at night. I think it's around 6 p.m. Eastern time, and send all those claims to the exchange. So for now, I'll do it manually. I select the new exchange view and clicked the Send Claims. And now the integration is complete, and that claim has been sent off to the exchange. So if the claim was acknowledged by the exchange, it'll move into a status of acknowledged and show up under here in your acknowledged claims. If it was rejected by the exchange, it will be moved into a status of rejected and show up in this view under rejected claims. In this case, the claim was accepted, and we can go take a look at it. I'm going to sort by date of service. Okay, it was the 26th date of service. And so here is the claim that I just sent out. It's in an acknowledged status, so it's moved from new to acknowledge. And I can also look at some of the information and messages that have come back on the exchange from the payer and from the exchange to let me know how this claim is coming along as far as being processed. So I can see under exchange responses that Claim MD, which is the exchange, has acknowledged the claim that I sent out. In this case, since we kind of sped up the timeline here, we've also received an acknowledgement from the payer that they have received the claim. And we've also received a message from the payer that they have paid the claim. Now, depending upon what happens, the payer may reject it or the exchange may reject it. But this exchange responses section is the area that you'll go to review any informational messages that has been sent back through the exchange regarding the processing of your claim. So now that my claim has been processed and paid by Aetna, which is the payer, I'd like to take a look at the ERA. And the way I do that is to come to the ERA's console and take a look at all of the ERAs that are new from the exchange. And I can take a look at when they've been paid. So here's the one that came back in response to the payment of my claim. So let's take a look at the structure of the ERA. I have the ERA ID that came back from the exchange, and I can actually click on that ID, and this will pull up the actual ERA remittance advice that was created at the exchange. So I can see the actual details of the ERA that was created by the exchange before it was even pulled into Psykdesk. Here is the exchange the ERA was created on, the payer ID and the payer, payment information regarding the ERA, amount and a check number if needed, when it was paid, the current status of the ERA, which is new, and the source of the ERA, which says it came from exchange. The other source that you could use would be manual if you created this ERA manual inside of your system. So let's take a look at the ERA payments section. The ERA payment actually maps one-to-one to a claim charge. So in this case, we only had one claim charge on our claim, and therefore there's only one ERA payment which will be used to pay that claim charge. Now that's not always going to be the case. Very often you will submit multiple claims and which have multiple claim charges to your payer, in this case Aetna, and Aetna will choose to pay a bunch of claims at once. So you may see multiple line items here. In fact, you will see them very often, which shows all of the claims that the payer has decided to batch up into one ERA and pay under one check or electronic payment. Now, if you take a look at the ERA payments, there's actually a subsection here called matched. And there are 4 different subsections that your ERA payments can fall into. And that's matched, unmatched, posted, and canceled. If the ERA payment is matched, it means that Psykdesk was able to match this ERA payment to the claim charge for which it's for. And then it will use that claim charge to be able to map back to the appropriate encounter and charge and create the appropriate payment when you post it. ERA payments in an unmatched status must first be matched before they can then be posted, and we'll see how to do that in a little bit. ERA payments that are in the posted status have already been posted, and then those in the cancel status are those payments that have been moved into a status of canceled and will not be posted. Posting refers to creation of the payer payments that will be created to update the patient's accounting on the patient's chart. So moving left to right, let's take a look at the ERA payment. I can select whether to post it or not when I hit the post button, the date of service, the claim status, patient, CPT code, and the claim amount. If it's in a matched status, I can actually click on the claim amount and it'll bring me to the claim that was used to generate that ERA payment. Next, we have some columns that are referring to the patient's responsibility to make sure that we get that correct. Now, the first one is the patient responsibility that we had on the charge, which was 0. The next is the complete patient responsibility that came across on the ERA, which is $15. So in this case, we did not have the same patient responsibility as the payer calculated In this case, we're going to have to update that patient responsibility and collect that $15 from the patient. This indicator indicates that we are going to update the charge on post to change the patient responsibility from $0 to $15. Now, there is a special copay section on the ERA which says that the ERA copay was $5 even though the patient responsibility is $15. So part of the patient responsibility was copay and part of it was something else. We'll see that in a little bit. We have the ability to automatically not only update the patient responsibility and the charge, but on post also update the insurance setup for the patient. So the payer is saying that the ERA copay is $5. When you post this, we'll automatically update that copay on insurance setup so that next time when we check that patient in, we'll collect the copay up front. Then there is the charge payer balance, and so this is the amount of the balance amount on the charge itself. Here's the ERA adjustment that is going to be processed. We're going to take the adjustment, and this is the allocation on the ERA payment. This is the amount that's actually being paid. Now I can actually click on the ERA allocation to view the ERA payment page, which allows me to view some additional information and make some choices as far as how I want the payer payment to be created and if I want any billing setup to be updated as well. So let's take a look at the ERA payment page. I have the data service as it came over from the payer, the CPT code, the amount that was sent to the payer to be paid, the patient responsibility that was calculated by the payer, a copay amount that may be included in the patient responsibility if the copay was a separate piece, the adjustment that the payer calculated, and the amount that the payer is actually going to pay for this particular payment. And this is the amount that will be allocated to the payer portion of the charge. The patient is Jill Jones. The status of this ERA payment is matched. The source is exchange, which means it came from the exchange versus a manual entry. The claim status shows process as primary, and there will be several different types of statuses here depending upon how the payer processed the claim. And then you can use these links to view the various pieces that have been matched to this ERA payment. So if you want to view the claim that was matched to this payment, you can click on View Claim. And so here is the claim charge that is matched to that ERA payment. I can view the actual charge. So I'm going to be posting a payment. When I post the ERA, I'm going to create a payer payment, which is going to be applied to the payer amount of the charge. I can view the patient in question, and then I can also view the insurance setup for the patient. And this is the insurance information, which I may choose to update as part of posting the ERA if I want to update the copay. Let's take a look at the Create Payer Payment section of the ERA payment page. This section gives you some details as to how the payer payment will be created, as well as what the balances will be on the charge after this payment is posted. You also have the option to override some of the values on the payment and determine whether those pieces will be included on the payment or not. So in this case, the ERA payment was matched to a claim charge, which is associated with a charge. And here is the charge in question. And that is the charge we are going to allocate this payment to. The charge has a value of $294.51. That happens to be the same that was on the payment. So that's typically what will be the case. The patient responsibility in the charge is 0. Yet the ERA payment through the payer has calculated the patient responsibility to be 15. So that's different from what we had. The adjustment on the payment is $58.90, and the actual amount being paid is $220.61. and this is the amount on the payment that will be allocated to the charge. Now, on posting this payment, just like when I create a payer payment manually, I have the option to update the patient responsibility on the charge. And so in this case, I'm going to take that update by clicking the checkbox. If I didn't want to take it, I would unclick the checkbox. So I'm going to take that update, and on post, the system is going to update the patient responsibility in the charge to $15, which will match what the payer said it was. At the top of this section, I have some information which will show me what the balances on the charge are currently and what they will be after I post this payment. So currently on this charge that was matched, the patient balance is 0. After I post this ERA payment and create the payer payment, as part of that post, since I decided to update the patient responsibility, the patient balance after post is going to be $15. The payer balance is currently $294.51, so that's what's outstanding on the charge. And after I post this, the balance will be 0. As part of posting, I also have the option to automatically update the copay on the billing setup for a patient. So in this case, somebody set up the copay for $25 on the billing setup. But the information that came back from the payer was that $10 was a coinsurance amount and $5 was for the copayment. So I can have the option to take the updated information from the payer and apply that to the patient billing setup page to update it, so that next time I check a patient in, it will be checked in with the appropriate patient responsibility. And so that's what's currently set to go through. And then finally, in the adjustment reasons section, you have the details behind how the payer calculated the adjustment to come up with the final payment. So let's go back to the ER page and post this payment. So now this payment moved into this section called posted, and the payment that was created is now in the posted column. And I can click on that payer payment and see the details behind it. So this is the payer payment that was created for $220.61. The allocation was $220.61, and the patient responsibility was updated to $15. I can also go to the patient's chart and look at the manage billing section, and I can see that here is the payer payment that was created, applied to this charge. The patient responsibility has been upped to $15. The patient balance was created now of $15 since we've updated the patient responsibility to that and have not collected yet. And the claim was marked as paid as part of the posting process. Let's take a look at how to manually match an ERA payment to a claim charge. So in this case, I have an ERA, and the payment is currently in an unmatched status. So before I can post this payment, I have to match it to a claim charge first, which will match it to a charge to allocate it to. So to do that, I click on the ERA allocation amount to bring up the ERA payment detail page. And on the action menu, I select match. This brings up the ERA payment match page where I can search for claim charges that possibly could match this payment and then select one to match it against. So the way that I select claim charges is I use the query section on the right hand side of this page. I know that the patient is Tina. Let me clear this out and find all of the claim charges for Tina. So here they are. In this section down below, I have the details for the ERA payment that I'm trying to match to. So I know that the date of service looks like 10/11/2021. So let me go see if I can find a date of service at 10/11/21. There it is. It's in a not matched status, so that looks good. So I'm going to select that particular claim charge, and I'm going to click on it, and then that will fill out this section which says I'm going to match this ERA payment to this claim charge, and hit save. So now the ERA payment is matched. If I go back to the ERA, it's in a match status. It's available to be posted, so I can post it now, which creates the payer payment and allocates it to the charge. And if for some reason I made a mistake, let me show you how to unwind that posting process. So I can navigate to the payment. I can delete the payment. So deleting that payment moves the ERA payment back from a posted status to a matched status. And if I wanted to unwind the matching process, I can select the ERA allocation, which brings me to the ERA payment page, select unmatched, delete the matched claim charge, and hit save. And so now the ERA payment is in the status of not matched. And I'm back to where I started. So let's take a look at creating a secondary claim inside of Psykdesk. To create a secondary claim, I'm going to need a secondary insurance and a primary claim that's already been created. So let me go to Jill Jones and add her a secondary payer. And we'll go ahead and add HMO, subscriber number, hit save. So let's go take a look at the primary claim I'm going to use. I'm going to use the one for the 426 encounter. Here's the primary claim. It's in an acknowledged status, and the ERA has come in. Let's go to the ERA. And so here's the ERA for the primary claim, and let's take a look at how it's going to post. Now in this case, when this ERA payment is posted, I'm not going to want to override the patient responsibility to $15. I do not want that amount to show up under the patient's balances for them to pay. However, that $15 was included in the calculation of the payment from the payer. So I can't override it to zero. I want to include the $15 in the calculation for payment, but I don't want it to update the patient's responsibility because I'm going to send out a secondary claim to collect that. So I'm not going to update the charge. I'm going to click this button to not update the charge. This is going to create a $15 payer balance after post. And when I send that secondary claim, I'm going to request a payment to pay for that $15. So let's go ahead and save that. And we're going to go ahead and post that. So now let's take a look at the patient's balances. And there is now an additional $15 balance that the payer owes. So now we're going to collect that by creating a secondary claim. And the way we do that is first to navigate to the primary claim and select Create Secondary Claim. Everything looks good as far as the ERA and exchange. Secondary insurance is the HMO for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So let's hit Create. So that now this creates a secondary claim, which can then be sent through the exchange just like the primary claim. So the type here is secondary, and you'll see the same type of information as you would the primary claim. You can also link directly to the primary claim from here, and then back to the secondary claim. Additionally, if I navigate to Jill Jones's patient chart on the billing tab, now there's an additional column in the payer section, and I can see the primary claim as well as the secondary claim, and I can drill into either one to find the appropriate information. So let's send that secondary claim through the exchange, and I can find it the same way as I do primary claims. Going under claims, looking for a claim in the status of new. Here is my secondary claim. I'm going to send that claim off to the exchange to get paid. Now the integration is complete. That claim has moved into a status of acknowledged. Here's the secondary claim right here. And now we're going to fast forward in time to when the ERA is actually paid and received. So I can navigate now to the ERA section. I'll look at new from exchange. So here's the ERA that we received after submitting the secondary claim. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ERA payment details. So I want to make sure my accounting is reflected correctly after I post this payment. Now in this case, the secondary payer paid an additional $10, but the amount outstanding was $15, which means the patient will be on the hook for the remaining $5. So when at post, I want to move $5 into the patient balance and close $10 from the payer balance. So right now that's not what's happening. I'm going to have this huge credit balance. So I do not want to take this adjustment. Okay, that looks a little bit better. The payer balance will be $15 after post, or be $5 after post, but I want that to be in the patient section. So I'm going to override the patient's responsibility to be $5, but then I'm going to have to manually override the adjustment so that everything ties together. So if I move $5 out of the override adjustment section, I'll get $279.51. Okay, so after this is posted, I'm going to create a patient balance of $5. That's what I want. The payer balance after post will be 0. So that looks good. I'm going to hit save and post. So that created the payment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the patient. And so now on the payer side, I have a 0 balance with 2 payments. I have 2 claims that have been paid. And I now have a patient balance of $5, which can be collected at some future date.